This is Climate Curious, the podcast for people who are bored, scared, or confused by climate change.
I'm Maryam, Pasha, the director and curator at TEDxLondon and the co-host of this podcast, alongside the amazing Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Hurst, activist and advocate exploring what positive masculinities can look like, and self-confessed climate normie.
So we are starting this season in New York City.
Yeah, we are.
We are back again.
The big apple.
The big fruit.
The humongous apple. The most humongous apple maybe in the history of mankind.
I really want to know why it's called that, but that is a whole other podcast.
Yeah. We'll come back.
We'll come back to that.
Circle back round.
So we're here, Ben. Why are we here?
We're here for Climate Week.
And Climate Week is a week where basically people from all over the world come to New York to talk about climate.
Do climate things.
To do climate things. To get exhausted.
Yep. Back to back.
No, but seriously, because there's a lot of like hate about traveling for climate, which I totally understand. But there's something really special about being able to be together in community with each other from around the world. You know, we have been to many, many events this week. We've taken part in panels, we've taken part in dinners, all this kind of stuff. And the thing that's kind of incredible is when you have, you know, people working, whether it's like in business or in Indigenous rights or in youth activism, who are normally in their communities on the ground, some corner of the world, but they get to like come here and be with their peers and learn and share and support and have solidarity. So it's a great space.
Yeah, it's so important as well. Everybody who works from home knows that you are so much more productive when you're just in the same place as the people you work with. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's so important.
Especially in intensity, so to really like further things.
Yeah, you can absolutely bang stuff out. I think that's what you see a lot, right? Is like people connecting with people that it would be so difficult for them to connect with otherwise.
Yeah.
And usually those connections will only be like an hour-long Zoom meeting where actually, when you're all here for a week, you can have like 3-4 hours in the same room and actually just do the things that you need to do.
Yeah. And I think also like have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
It's hard to have difficult conversations
especially
online.
when you can't feel someone.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's our defense. We're here in New York City.
Yeah. That is
case.
the justification.
And we've gotten to speak to some really awesome people.
So good.
Some people we've wanted to speak to for years, actually, that we've been waiting to be able to get in person.
Yeah.
And
difficult people to track down. This is what I'm saying. That's why you have to be here.
We've eaten some delicious food. We've been caught in some killer traffic. Rainstorms.
They call them storms here. They're actually storms, aren't they? I thought they just meant rain, but no, it's pretty torrential. Yeah, torrential. And
I think, what is my reflection? What's your reflection after being here for almost
a week? My reflection, I think, is we've been doing this for about 3 years now, 3.5 years maybe. And I've heard so many people talk about Indigenous rights. I've heard so many people talk about involving Indigenous communities and learning and sharing information and them, like Indigenous communities having the solutions and not having seats at the table. And I think this is probably for me been the first time that I've actually seen what that can look like when people are really involved. And interestingly, it's really uncomfortable for you if you're not Indigenous because you actually have to hold space for people. But it's, I think, seeing that modeled, like what it actually looks like to be in spaces and to allow other people to have control over them and to teach, to actually teach and to learn in the way that they like to teach is like been a really immersive experience for me, I think.
That's pretty powerful.
And I had to drink that cacao.
Yeah, Ben and I took part in a cacao ceremony yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
It's intense to say the least.
Yeah. Not delicious, but very significant.
Yeah.
Very grounded.
You found the taste difficult. I found the physicality of it difficult.
Yeah. Which goes to say neither of us found it comfortable.
No,
but it was like really
incredible to be part of.
Spiritual. Yeah.
That's definitely something I'm going to remember. You know, for me, actually, as someone who can get someone who can just get really polarized, meaning like, and get really stuck in my point of view. I can get really like, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, like, you know, all of that kind of very divisive rhetoric. I was reminded this week how when we say we have to bring everyone along, it means we have to really bring everyone along.
Literally,
it doesn't mean that
person.
Like we have to sit in a room and listen to fossil fuel executives justify their existence, right? Don't get me twisted. What I mean is, if people are genuinely committed to the solution, they may not look like or come from a background that you think.
Right.
And for those of us, I think, who are activists and progressive, when we say that, we're always talking about like marginalized communities or indigenous communities or, you know, people who've been outside. But I think sometimes you also have to let in the business people and the billionaires and the policymakers.
Yeah.
And the people who feel like they want to be more moderate. And actually, it needs to be a really broad group of people. It doesn't mean you have to like, you know, it reminds me of this speaker we worked with for TEDxLondon last year, who is this reverend. And
what a guy.
Keith.
A legend,
and
an icon.
He talked about, he really like, he has this phrase, listening for connection rather than conversion.
Yeah.
And I have to repeat it to myself because sometimes you feel like this thought that if you even listen to people you disagree with, you're somehow validating or
giving the space to them,
or giving them the kind of agreement that you're like, and actually you can listen to just connect with someone and understand what motivates them. And so that has really been for me a bit of that kind of stepping back and understanding all the different actors, because it's a truly transformation. I know we talk about it lightly and we talk about system change and all that kind of stuff, but we're truly having to, everything that we have built to this point, all the good and the bad, right? All the progress, all the destruction, all of it has to change in 30 years.
Yeah, it's literally
everything.
We're on a clock, yeah.
And in order to only have a percentage of people die that somehow we've accepted as being acceptable.
That's fine, don't worry about it.
You know, but like, you know, to starve off, like to not go over these tipping points that they talk about where we don't actually know what happens when we go over them. We have a boundary. And so it's like, I don't know, 3,000 years, 4,000 years. In the case of indigenous communities, 60,000 years worth of like lives and people. We have 30 years to change.
Yeah.
And that's like needs everyone.
Yeah. It is like a real moment of being forced to reimagine what revolution looks like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's like because I think in my mind, I think I said this in one of the episodes actually, that in my mind, it feels like what I have perceived this to be is like beating the bad guys.
Right.
Rather than transforming all of us into a space or into a way of being where we're not literally destroying the planet that we live on.
Yeah.
But for that to happen, everybody has to be involved.
Yeah.
Which I think is, it's an interesting shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if I think about the interviews we've done this week, the things that really I think I will take into my everyday in the way I think about this is to center love way more. Yeah. And not to think of that as some kind of fuzzy, useless,
wishy-washy nonsense.
Nonsense. But how do you use like the greatest motivator? That's one. The other one is like around this creativity, and not just in like this traditional sense of like creative industries, which also humor and all of that I'll be taking, but also like, you know, in the conversation we have with Nicole from Canopy around this idea of like looking at the things we have around us and thinking creatively, how can we use those in a way that actually benefits the world? Like, how do we bring that new perspective? So I think for me, it's like love and creativity are the two messages I take away from this.
I think a big one for me also, John was talking about in our interview, talking about pollution and not talking about climate change. Right. Or talking about forest fires or talking about hurricanes or talking about floods rather than just talking about climate change. And really naming and labeling like what the thing is, what the impact of the thing is that we're talking about, which I think for me really shifted something in my brain, because climate change sounds maybe intentionally like so nebulous. It sounds like such a like airy fairy idea, whereas what we're talking about now is like real term impacts.
I think we should actually bring back an old guest to talk to us more about this. So remember Melinda Janke?
Yeah.
She's been talking a lot more about this as well. Like obviously coming in from a legal perspective and the usefulness of, because she basically taught me that if you talk about pollution, there's an actor.
Yeah.
Climate change doesn't have an actor.
No. It's just the climate. The climate's just changing.
Right?
It's doing what it wants.
But pollution has a polluter.
Yeah.
And that's like very powerful. So I think we should have her back to tell us a bit more about that and how she's using it in her work as well.
Melinda, that's your official invitation.
Yep.
To find your way back to us.
Watch your inbox.
Come home. We miss you.
I think we've also got some really, so you're going to hear some really exciting stuff from us.
Oh my gosh,
season.
some good stuff.
We're going to laugh.
Yeah.
I have to say that I actually had to try not to cry like in at least 80% of the episodes we recorded.
Yeah, I saw you welling up a couple of times.
Really, really emotional about this stuff. And why not? Right? Like, I mean, not that you all need to sit there and listen to me cry, but it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's like a reminder that like, oh yeah, this is serious.
It's real life.
It's real life. And I think we've got some incredible young voices from all over.
Yeah, literally all over.
All over.
How crazy is that?
And some stories that I think blew my mind. Like really unexpected stories that I think will stay with you.
Yeah. That should stay with you.
Yeah. So, and I guess ultimately, I feel even more curious.
Yeah.
At the end of this week.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that this podcast doesn't actually alleviate any of the curiosity? Just makes you ask better questions.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Like it's like you, for those of you who I guess played old school video games, you know, like you're in a room, you explore and pick up all the items.
Oh my gosh.
You finally open the door, you think you're done, and then there's like an even bigger room.
Yeah.
And it feels like each season we like open the door and we're like, oh, there's more.
We're like, put the key in the socket, go through the door, crawl through the hole.
Yeah.
There's a bigger room with more puzzles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a never-ending escape room. But it's fun. It's a fun one.
Yes. So we hope you enjoy it. And remember,
stay curious. Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.